It's an easier thing to deal with. That no one is listening to Nicki Minaj. It's all just bots. Than the reality that, hey, this is really bad. Somebody with a lot of influence is using their influence horribly.
A few weeks ago, Politico published a story that set Stan Twitter and the MAGA internet into a nuclear war. The story was based on data from an AI intelligence firm that claimed that Nicki Minaj was secretly being propped up by tens of thousands of bots amidst her pro-Trump pivot. The allegations caused chaos online, with politicians like J.D. Vance and Gavin Newsom weighing in, Trump advisors fighting back and forth, and even Cardi B responding. I have my friend Olay here, and today we're going to be discussing Politico's Nicki Minaj report, breaking down the bot allegations and their veracity, and unpacking what the whole incident reveals about the invisible machinery that runs beneath the surface of our political and cultural life. Olay, welcome.
Hey, sis. It's nice to be here.
I feel like a lot of people, obviously have followed Nicki's rise. We've followed her career. She's been in the public eye for a while. But I kind of want to zoom back and just give people the general arc of her MAGA pivot for those who haven't been following as closely. And I want to start with this tweet that she posted actually back in 2012. It's so funny to remember, but Mitt Romney was running against Obama. And for some reason, she kind of seemed to be like boosting Mitt Romney. She said that she was like potentially voting for Mitt Romney.
Yeah, she had lyrics. I'm a Republican voting for Mitt Romney.
She later used the song Black Barbies to speak out actually during the Trump's first administration against calls for mass deportation. But something seems to have like unlocked in her, I would say, really in the wake of like Charlie Kirk's death in the past couple months.
I don't think that we know Nicki Minaj's true feelings. I don't think we know what that is. And I don't think it's really, we're able to truly ascertain it. But I truly think there should be lines that you shouldn't cross. If people have a certain kind of principle, no matter what financial situation you're in, no matter how much you want relevance, no matter how much you want clout, there would be certain things. If she was somebody who fundamentally cared about people, cared about her strongly LGBTQ fan base, if she cared about any of these communities, truly, if her principles were aligned with that, there would be certain things she would not do, even for money, even for clout, even for out of desperation. So I don't even think it's about her genuinely, whether or not she loves the Democrats or Republicans or on any moral level. I think it's about who gives her attention, who soothes her ego, and who's able to benefit her more. And I think we happen to be in a moment in time in her career where she's feeling pretty cold. She has financial troubles, she's legal troubles, and I think that is what we're seeing play out.
I agree with you that I don't think this is some secret MAGA kind of tendency necessarily. Again, because of the Black Barbie moment with Trump 1.0, when it was cool to be resistance, she was going to go along with that. She'll kind of just go along with anything. And right now, MAGA was somewhat culturally ascendant, I guess, this past fall. And so she's going to glom onto that. But she certainly glommed on pretty hard. I think it was really in the past several months, really last fall, when she really began leaning in and I think identifying as a MAGA artist. Showing up to the Turning Point USA America Fest, doing that sit down talk. That to me, it's you're not just doing the Taylor Swift kind of ambiguous thing of am I MAGA? Am I not? I don't know. I'll certainly pander to them. I'll sell tickets to them. It's oh, I am intentionally aligning myself with this right-wing movement.
I think Nicki's on a payroll. I think it's truly that simple. I believe 1,000% that she's getting a check to show up at these places. And I think it really speaks to whatever financial situation she's finding herself in. Because if you hear her talking at that Turning Points USA, if that is not somebody who believes what they're talking about, who has a coherent school of thought. When I hear clavicular, when I hear Andrew Tate, I know they believe this bullshit. When I hear Just Pearly Things, I know that she's struggling to string this together. You know it's an act. And it's the same thing with Nicki. She doesn't even remember the points. You can see she's trying to think it through and trying to just come up with enough to give them the breadcrumbs and the dog whistles, but it's not something she's invested in to be able to even spout off coherently. It only speaks to how bad of a situation she must be in now to be doing this. But I don't believe that she believes anything. I don't believe that any of it is genuine. I don't think Nicki Minaj woke up one day and was I'm tired of living in the closet with my MAGA beliefs. I'm tired of having to be a secret Republican. The time is now.
I mean, a lot of what you're talking about in sort of like the paid allegations and stuff. Listen, I believe it. Like, I don't think people probably show up to America Fest for free. Like, Turning Point especially is known as this like extremely well-funded organization. Of course, this is Charlie Kirk's old, group that he co-founded. They've raised, especially in the wake of his death, like millions and millions and millions of dollars. So do I think they cut her a big check to appear? 100%. But the thing that I really want to dig in today is this Politico article that dropped that was like a nuclear bomb on the internet. Like, I don't think you were as online that day because I kept texting you. You were like, what? And I texted you like 100 tweets. And I was like, we need to discuss. But there was this article that was published by Politico last month on February 23rd by journalist Jason Bieferman, and it was titled, Nicki Minaj's social media is propped up by thousands of bots analysts find. The subhead reads, an analysis shared with Politico reveals the rap sensation's advocacy for conservative causes has been amplified by an army of bots and coordinated activity. This caused so much controversy online because immediately, as soon as Politico, of all places, like published this piece, I think it sort of like validated what a lot of people were feeling already, which is like, this is not authentic. And potentially one of these right-wing groups is actually paying to inflate her metrics.
That doesn't surprise me. First of all, in the year 2026, Twitter is not a legitimate platform. Let me just start from there from saying Twitter in and of itself is owned by a right-wing billionaire troll who was very much so active in putting the right-wing troll we have for president right now. So like Twitter is a conspirator. If there's any right-wing nonsense going on, Twitter is a part of it. Elon Musk, as in plain sight, engineered it to be a website that pushes right-wing and allows all of this bots and everything to go unchecked. So this, to me, this being controversial, like even surprising anybody in 2026 is like, where you been? Well, of course, the entire website is there to do right-wing propaganda. So that's not a shocker to me. Honestly, if anything, I think it restores my faith in humanity because Nicki Minaj has, I say one of the most, but I legitimately cannot think of a more toxic fan base. Like I can't think of one. I'm saying one of the most. So I say that to say they're mentally ill. In a way, that's what I've been feeling for so many years. So to me, I think it's better for me to like realize like, no. There might be some hope. A lot of like Nicki Minaj's base, as crazy and as stan and obsessed as they are when it comes to Nicki Minaj, I'm glad to know that there aren't as many just immediately jumping onto a right-wing propaganda pipeline just because she's asked them to now. So hearing that it's bots is like, great. Maybe there's some hope.
Well, let's go through the allegations that were made in this report because Politico actually linked directly to the report, which is this 24-page report that I think sort of like outlines effectively kind of where they see manipulation happening on her social media. So the first is around last fall. Basically, they note that around November 2025, she was not really engaging in political content, but suddenly there was this shift. That shift coincided with these moments where suddenly the conversation online and Twitter specifically started to like amplify messaging. So this is when she's sort of talking about Donald Trump, MAGA. She gave a speech at the UN where she thanked Trump, all leading up, of course, to December 25th when Erica Kirk brought her on stage. And they put the bots in several different kind of categories. So they show basically like, it's not just like what you might think of in the music world where people just buy a lot of bots to just like be sycophantic and like flood your replies and be like, we love you, queen, whatever. It was really kind of more of like a political campaign operation where you had these like amplifiers, you had these sort of like top talkers, you had these contributors, and you had these other kind of groups where effectively, they sort of exhibited inauthentic behavior. Now, they even went so far as to name a bunch of handles in this report, and we're going to get into the responses because some of the people in this report came out and were like, wait a minute, I'm not a bot. I'm not a bot, so like, why am I in this report? But I think it just shows like that whoever you believe, whoever's behind it, whether it's paid, whether it's not paid, you cannot argue that since she's pivoted to MAGA, she has been receiving what seems like inauthentic sort of boosts online. The report claims that over 18,000 bots were used, and 33% of all profiles interacting with Nicki Minaj's political posts were assessed as fake. This level of inauthentic participation is exceptionally high, the report says, when compared to established benchmarks for organic social media discourse, where fake account presence typically ranges between 7 and 10%. The fake profiles also did not operate independently or sporadically. Instead, they were consistently active alongside authentic users, posting during similar timeframes and adopting engagement rhythms that closely mirrored organic behavior. This pattern suggests a deliberate attempt to integrate into genuine conversations, increasing the credibility and visibility of amplified content. The scale of influence, by the way, was particularly evident, the report says, on December 26, which is right after she appeared at the Turning Point conference, when fake profiles generated 56% of all comments on Nicki Minaj's political posts. On that day, fake accounts not only participated in the discussion, but dominated the conversation, materially shaping both its volume and momentum. Can you, based on the report, explain like the type of amplification and what sort of conversation, again, according to this report, were they amplifying around Nicki?
According to the report, they analyzed like tens of thousands of different accounts and different engagement on Nicki Minaj's posts, particularly from fall to now, and they realized that a lot of it is what seems to be, if not even outright bots, a coordinated effort to create this kind of positive like engagement around her. I think there's an aspect of it being bots, and there's an aspect of it being stans who coordinate and work together in a function that's so hard to believe that it appears bot-like, to believe that there are these many people at home this obsessed with Nicki, that they're like, at this time make sure we show this much positive and love for her on these posts, which to me is consistent with like Fandom and the kind of like Barbs and audience that Nicki has always had.
If you're watching this video and you like my work, please support me on Patreon via the link below or buy a paid subscription to my tech and online culture newsletter at usermag.co. That's usermag.co. I don't have any long-term brand partnerships, and a lot of my content is effectively demonetized. I've lost major brand deals for speaking out on certain issues and for challenging power. As you can imagine, advertisers are not exactly eager to work with somebody who covers a lot of the topics that I cover and talks about the things that I talk about. These videos I make are entirely funded by you, and I can't continue to make them without your support. So if you get any value out of the videos that I create and you want me to be able to create more, please support me on Patreon or Substack via the links below. On Patreon, I do bonus episodes, monthly Q&A live streams, and post frequent updates about my work. My Substack newsletter gives you a bi-weekly roundup of everything that I'm seeing and reading and paying attention to online. You can also get my newsletter on Patreon. Once again, the links to everything are below in the description. Every dollar of your support makes such a difference. The type of inauthentic activity as well that this report found that the conversation and the content really focused on 4 different buckets, or 4 different types of posts that were being leveraged to push Nicki Minaj. And that is this angle of Christians in Nigeria, that Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria, and I guess MAGA has to save them. I don't know. This is something that she has talked about a lot, and there was evidence of manipulation around that. Support for general conservative figures, opposition to gender transition. So there was a lot of bot activity boosting conversation. You mentioned that thing that she said on stage with Erica Kirk about sort of like boys will be boys. And then criticism of Democratic actors. And actually, this criticism of Democratic actors thing, I want to dig into a little bit, because when you look at some of the posts from these people that are boosting Nicki, it's not necessarily clear that they're bots. And a lot of this criticism of Democratic actors, it is like, I think, fair criticism, actually, of people like Gavin Newsom. This Democrat thing kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit, just because I was like, what is the deal with Cyabra? And I might be pronouncing it Cyabra. It's basically the firm that issued this report. And when I started to look into them, their name was actually pretty familiar, because they've issued previous reports and press releases specifically around the genocide in Gaza. They are an Israeli intelligence and AI firm that creates these reports mostly as marketing for their own surveillance products. And they've previously claimed that a bunch of very legitimate people criticizing the genocide in Palestine were bots. There's also like people in this report like Dom Luker, who is a well-known disinformation actor. he's bad. He's pushed a lot of like really actually anti-Semitic stuff, problematic stuff. He's a right-wing poster, but he's not a bot. And when this report dropped, you started to see a lot of this reaction online, especially from the stan armies that are against Nicki Minaj, to be like, wait a minute, who made this report? This is BS. And that's when Alex Brusewitz gets involved. He is basically the main influencer liaison for Trump. He is the one that is sort of like the architect of Trump's new digital media strategy. And he very quickly starts getting into beef.
He's the one who started implying that Cardi B's team is somehow associated with this report coming out.
Yes. So he posts that Cardi B's agent, Mike G at UTA, had recently been added to Cybara's Brand and Entertainment Council. He also pointed to David Wander, who's the chief digital officer at Jay-Z's Rock Nation, an entertainment company that represents Megan Thee Stallion, as another Cybara council figure with ties to the company. It sounded insane. Like, he was tweeting that it's journalistic malpractice and totally unethical that Jason Bieferman failed to disclose that not only is the company that did the bot analysis of Nicki Minaj's partnered with Cardi B's agent, they're also partnered with an executive at Jay-Z's Rock Nation. And this is when things start to go off the rails, because like the fact that like all entertainment executives are like 1 degree of separation from each other is just not evidence of any sort of wrongdoing.
And it's just a distraction. It's to take people from, like, instead of looking at that and focusing on, like, this issue and what it's really about and something political and, like, these actual different things that Nicki Minaj is advocating around. Or even if you wanted to be critical of this, like, company in the direction of what you talked about, like, oh, whether or not this company has ties to Israel, whether they've previously done this or that. They don't want the conversation to be there. It's let's move it over to, like, regular entertainment stan wars so you don't ever address those things. And now we're just fighting about whether or not this is Cardi versus Nicki and whether or not it's some conspiracy to make Nicki look bad as opposed to how the machine actually works behind the scenes. Because I think that's what it really is. It's really about how these different machines and how misinformation and disinformation and everything like travels online and the different intentions or goals of a lot of these different places.
I think this is something that we're starting to see more and more of, unfortunately, where like I think everybody assumes that like everything is like 4D chess. Even you had Cardi B literally speaking out, giving commentary, being like, I'm not involved with this. This is a data company that has tons of investors, including my agent, who is like some big time entertainment guy who probably has his hands in 50 other companies. He had nothing to do with this report, which was probably made by some PR person and blasted out to reporters, and Politico picked it up. And like, basically leave me out of this or I'm going to sue you. Brusewitz then, like, it's like blood in the water. He's doubling down. And then you have these stan armies like warring, arguing that like, no, the other side is manipulating the internet. And it's really not that deep.
And you are correct, but Fandom is its own discussion to be had. Because I think that is like a part of this conversation, right? Like there's a part of exploring like who's doing this report, what are their intentions, how much of it is even true, right? I think that's one conversation. There's another conversation I think to be had is how Fandom affects sane, rational people to the point where a stan does look like a bot. I can see how you can interpret a stan to be, surely this aren't these many people, you know what I mean? Because stan wars they're normal, they're commonplace. Like it was easy for him to distract people by making it, okay, Cardi being Cardi B's team, because then it just becomes the next chapter in what is a very long stan war between Nicki and Cardi fans.
I know, and it's easier to make this like seem like some proxy war, but I think this is just something that we're seeing online. Like for instance, I think that people several years ago learned that the internet is being manipulated. And they're correct. You're right. Like Elon Musk is amplifying the internet. He's warping it in various ways. There are bot armies that are shaping our political discourse. There was something that Bridget Todd actually said on her podcast a while ago. And she was talking about how like it's almost more powerful for somebody to think that bots are involved in something than to even be involved, because you're able to like discredit them. And it's like, do I think that Nicki's stuff is boosted by bots? Sure. Do I think that like Turning Point maybe boosted her tweet a little bit in certain instances? Maybe, like maybe some right-wing person did. But as you mentioned, stan armies are always subject to manipulation. There have been record companies that have been engaging in this in years. It's not like any of this is new or had any like real meaningful effect on her career or social following writ large. Like even all of this, like if you take this report at face value, which I wouldn't, I'm a little skeptical of their analysis, but still, it's only on Twitter. And Twitter is like the least important social network, you know, when you're a pop star.
And that's true, which I think speaks to like where Nicki Minaj's career is at right now. Like at the end of the day, like you're only as good as what you last did, you know what I mean, in terms of entertainment and music and whatever have you. And right now, Nicki Minaj has essentially put her own career for what she's supposed to be known for and supposed to be doing on ice, and has made herself like, oh, I'm a political figure, I'm being this, I'm doing that, this is what I'm about. And so what it will have an effect on is her reputation, you know?
To me, what's so interesting about this story is that, like, I do kind of think that this report is bullshit. And I do think that she was probably boosted by some modicum of bots, probably has been for a while, potentially even like her record agency. Like, I don't even know that they're necessarily like that invested in boosting her politically, although maybe some are. Again, Elon Musk, it's like a right-wing website or whatever. But ultimately, like whatever little bit of boost that she got like 4 times on Twitter is nothing to her broader reach. And I think it's interesting how quickly people jumped on this story in this attempt to kind of like discredit her. Because I think just even the allegations that like your audience is fake these days, like can end up having more of a meaningful impact than you would think. And I guess like I'll say like what bothers me about it too is like, as somebody that reports a lot on like fan dynamics online, everyone is always accusing the other person of being fake. Like people are accusing Cardi B of buying followers or whatever. People are accusing Nicki of using bots. And it's like the entire industry, the music industry generally is so fake. Like TikTokers are accepting money, you know, to like promote artists that they're not disclosing. Like it's all kind of a charade.
I think it's cope in general. I think you see it across the board. Like when it comes to the internet, like if someone's complaining about something, about anything, it doesn't even have to be about like a person, a celebrity, just like a sentiment they see expressed a lot online or they experience, the response is always, that's just the internet. Those are bots. Anytime, like I can think of hate trains and hate campaigns in my life, different things I experience as a regular phenomenon in the internet, and people's response is always, those are bots. Those are probably bots. You're probably arguing with a 12-year-old. It's probably not even real. It's blah, blah, blah. It's this way to diminish what like the significance or harm of anything that's happening. So I think it's harder for people to reconcile like, hey, Nicki Minaj is somebody who's been very powerful and very prominent for a long time. She has a huge, massive fan base that hang on to her every word and are committed to supporting her. So the reality is, if she decides to make a right-wing pivot, it will have an effect and influence on a bunch of people. And I think people rather believe it's an easier thing to deal with. That no, it's all fake. Nicki Minaj is just completely irrelevant. Nobody gives a no one is listening to Nicki Minaj. It's all just bots. Then the reality that, hey, this is really bad. Somebody with a lot of influence is using their influence horribly.
That's literally exactly kind of the point that I felt like I'm like, not that she's not an irrelevant loser that's on the decline. I don't want to like act like that. But I do think it is bad, you know, the sort of what she's doing. I also think it's really insidious the way that the Trump administration continues to engage in like these pop culture moments and these like artist beefs basically, and insert themselves and kind of basically make these like fan battles into like political things, because I feel like that's also something that they're having. I mean, JD Vance was tweeting about it, Gavin Newsom was tweeting about it, and it's just like, wait, this is actually like a pretty toxic way to engage in politics. Like, why are we making politics into like stan wars? That's probably like the worst type of like discussion to be having around sort of like our political system.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, but it's also consistent, right? Like Donald Trump was a reality star. I've said for years that what makes the Republicans so effective, or the right so effective in converting people to their ideology, is that they download it onto people when they don't realize it's happening in pop culture. It's happening when all these kids are watching a bunch of right-wing streamers that they maybe signed on to watch because they were playing games or talking about fun or things that was, and the next thing you know, that's why Aiden Ross and them have Donald Trump sitting there and all these different people. And so they're being force fed it in all these different ways. So here you have all these people who wouldn't necessarily go jump for a political discussion or to sign on to explicit ideological talks. But what they will sign on to is entertainment and their fans and their people and their faves and whoever they're championing. And so when that goes, there's this entertainment world that they entered under the guise of being a part of, being fans, being stans, entertainment, music becomes, it's like it morphs so quickly they don't even realize that now they're championing these things. And it makes sense. It's smart, because so much of what is stan ideology is like losing yourself to the fandom, like being so like obsessed with this person that you're going along with whatever. And so much of being a stan is about like contorting yourself, you know, trying to justify whatever they do. That's the perfect sitting duck vulnerable population to say, oh, well, now just twist yourself to defend these politics. And the next thing you know, they're embracing all these like political ideologies and they don't realize it. So many people who are right-wing do not identify as right-wing. They do not see themselves politically. They'll tell you, I'm not political, I'm not even blah, 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 blah. But the shit that they think is right-wing ideology because it's fed to them in a bunch of other different arenas without them knowing. They don't realize when they're watching their beloved Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and all of these people, like, they're all right-wing figures. They're all right-wing figures. And it's like, oh, surprise, they're interviewing Trump. They're voting for Trump. And it's like, it wasn't a surprise if you understand that that's what's happening, but that's how they're getting them. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think it's also like basically like instigating this massive kind of internet controversy and reigniting the like Cardi, Nicki beef, et cetera, is like a very convenient distraction where people are not talking about policies. Like you mentioned earlier, it's like we're not discussing ICE ripping off the, people off the streets or Gaza or these other sort of more important issues. And people are just being sort of placated by this, like the drama of it all and the gossip of it all and like waiting. I mean, I myself was guilty. It's like you're refreshing the feed like, oh my God, is she going to respond? Who's going to respond next? I really liked what was written in the FWIW newsletter, which is written by this girl, Chanda. She wrote about the whole sort of bot controversy, and she said, this is a preview of how the 2026 midterms will be fought online. Algorithmic preconditioning, shaping feeds months, even years in advance, so that certain narratives feel normal, popular, and culturally inevitable. While Democrats budget for boosted posts and consultant-produced videos only during election season, the right is playing the long game and has already infiltrated the algorithm. Republicans post year-round, go viral more often than Democrats. Their messaging is woven into fandoms, lifestyle content, and online discourse so stealthily that it often just doesn't register as politics at all. It feels like a vibe. I think that's like 100% accurate and kind of like the point that you made as well. But I think that's also why this story went so viral, is because number one, it was published in like Politico, like a political news outlet. And it was like, here is direct evidence that there was actually political implications instead of like political actors looking to warp like political discourse. And so it just felt like sort of like the hood being pulled up a little bit on some of these like Republican tactics that often we all know take place, but they're really hard to prove.
I think from my perspective, I just wish people saw why it's effective. When Nicki Minaj first started doing this pivot, I was on Francesca Fiorentini's YouTube, who I love. Shout out to Francesca in the Bitchuation Room. When I was on there, it was live, and we were talking about, she wanted to talk about Nicki Minaj, but it was when she first started doing the stuff around Nigeria. And there were these people in the live like, why are we talking about this? This isn't important. Why are we talking about this? Why? And they just kept doing that the whole time. And I think that is like kind of our greatest disadvantage is, hey, Republicans and the right have tapped into this. And I think that is why they have dominated the culture wars and all this ideologically for all these years now, is because it permeates into everything we do. But so many people are on our side of the fence, like, and I mean the large side of the fence, not just like liberals, leftists, yada, 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 everybody over here, right? Where like everybody over here, there's this kind of idea that like we're above it. We shouldn't be talking about entertainment and all the different things and the different avenues that do matter and do affect how people become politically involved. Like it does matter. You're like, why are we talking about Nicki Minaj and Nicki Minaj making a right-wing pivot? Because it's a big deal. She has an influence of millions of people, and if she's out here spreading conservative propaganda around Nigeria and claiming there's a Christian genocide in Nigeria, that has real implications. There's a reason why they're using these people to manufacture support. But what happens is, sometimes I think we're left in this position as advocates or messengers or journalists, all these different people, when people decide that's not important. Don't address that as important. Like when people wanted to like sound the alarm on like the Joe Rogans and Theo Vaughns and why you should care about this manosphere space.
It is a distraction. Like I do want to acknowledge that, like, yes, I totally agree with you. Like I think the left generally like doesn't, engage in this entertainment stuff very much. But like I do think that like the freak out about this specifically like was sort of a distraction, and they're able to just consistently, like the manipulation on the right is the fact that they're consistently able to like dominate the narrative and manufacture these viral moments. Whatever, 18,000 bots or whatever boosted Nicki over the course of 5 months last year is nothing compared to the mega viral controversy that this like bot report story like caused. And that was able to generate this whole new news cycle that galvanized her base even further. And like, that's, I guess, like, that's where their power lies. It's not that they're like buying fake bots to like manufacture popularity. It's that they are able to like generate this conversation so consistently and so effectively that like gets people involved and watching. And I think that's kind of like the real manipulation that we see.
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is not recognizing what makes Republicans powerful, how they are doing things is a mistake. And very often people are telling themselves, this doesn't matter. You don't need to, and like, it might not matter inherently or what it is or these people, but at the end of the day, they're doing it for a reason. They're having massive influence. So if when people are trying to point that out, why this is a bad thing, what it is that they're trying to accomplish, and what is the larger, like, step back from Nicki Minaj, look at the larger apparatus as to what's happening, and people's response is like, it's bots, it's fake, it doesn't matter, it's celebrity nonsense, Nicki's, you know what I mean, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, that is how, like, the next thing you know, you blink and there's this massive influence that they have. That's what I'm saying, is sometimes we dismiss the efficacy of these different approaches by telling ourselves to go back to the why people wanted to eat up the idea that it's bots. It's because, oh, if it's bots, if it's fake, there's nothing to do. There's nothing to address. And I think that's why people prefer that approach, that response to it.
Yeah. Well, it's also just this like very like emotionally resonant narrative to say, yes, that person that I don't like, they're totally fake. They're propped up by bots. It's all fake. It's all nonsense, whatever. You want that to be true. And it probably is true to a certain extent. Like Nicki is being propped up by right-wing wackos, but I don't think like 18,000 bots did that. I think, like you said, it's more like she's getting a lot of money probably behind the scenes from these companies, like from these, you know, from these Trump organizations that are having her speak at their event. And that is probably incredibly lucrative. One other thing I think that's interesting about how all of this went down too is that the right used it to further discredit a mainstream media outlet, a political news outlet that's actually done really good accountability journalism on the Trump administration. And they were claiming like, oh, Politico's fake news. At one point they were claiming that like Politico coordinated with Complex and Cardi B, of course, to like attack, you know, to do this attack on Nicki. And it's just so ridiculous to imagine that like Politico would coordinate their editorial calendar with Complex at all. But again, this firm sends out these reports as PR. Politico happened to write it up. It's not that deep. And even if you don't think it's true or think it's true, whatever, Politico is a legitimate news outlet. And it's crazy just like, I think how the right was able to like weaponize it in that way as well, to kind of be like, look at the media once again, who trusts the media.
I think like at this point, for me, I'm like the right, the Republicans, they're like, I don't think have a like one shred of integrity. If fake news means anything to you coming out of the mouth of the right, like, I don't know what to tell you at this point. I don't even know like how to address that or engage that. But what I will say, as far as what I guess I just find interesting is my own thing. I don't think it's Turning Point USA or like Nicki Minaj's team or something or whatever that are responsible for these. If there were bots or anything like that or whatever was happening, because the reality is that if you're paying for somebody, you're paying for somebody's influence. That you obviously believe that they have. You're trying to get something back from them. I'm not going to pay somebody for their influence if I believe they don't have it and I need to now pay to prop them up. So I don't think that is what is happening. I think Twitter and all these websites are owned by a bunch of like right-wing billionaires with their own agenda who've broken the website and all kind of like nonsense goes afoot, but I don't think that's what's happening. I think people like the bots and nonsense. They like the story because, like I said, they can dismiss it and then it becomes like a Stan War thing, and that's funner. Like, I do intellectually understand we're manufacturing content, like what Nicki Minaj is there to do and like, you know, get more support or whatever thing. I just don't even really understand why it's necessary. Like at this point, like I feel like the right, I'm like, what do you think, Taylor, like the right stands to gain by Nicki Minaj?
Yeah, like why would you even want her around?
Yeah, like you're empowered.
I think they will always struggle with marginalized communities who they oppress, right? And so I think like if they can get another big Black celebrity on board, especially one, you know, Cardi B has been more active in politics too, like coming out in support of Jasmine Crockett, like the, you know, she's boosted Democrats. So like if they can sort of have this counter to that, but the whole bot thing feels very 2018. Like this is actually not even how internet manipulation works anymore. Again, it's mostly through organic means and specifically also just like clip farming accounts. Like when I see these campaigns, like there was a clip farming campaign that ran, you know, around Erica Kirk after Charlie's death, where they were, you know, paying people to boost and post positive videos of Erica Kirk. And these are all like seemingly organic videos that are appearing on meme pages. And it's like, that's how influence is sort of built. It's much more subtle. Like buying a bunch of bots like on Twitter, maybe that would have worked like 10 years ago, but I don't even think it like does that much now because Twitter is such a cesspool.
Twitter is not today what it was like at its most influential or whatever. Obviously, a ton of people are on Twitter, XYZ, so I'm not ever going to take that away. But I would say that the majority of who's really like going out and supporting Nicki Minaj's music and the majority whatever that base is probably Instagram people, like to be honest, which is why she's on Twitter acting a fool, but her Instagram is deactivated since all this happen, because I swear the truth is most likely lie and who's not going for whatever. So to me, regardless of whatever like support, like the appearance of support or not, or whatever that's really like drummed up on Twitter is not the end all be all, or what even truly goes to affect her career. Like if you look, there's a reason why places like the Shade Room that post a lot of right wing and like the Nicki Minaj's and these kind of pivots don't post that stuff. Like if you look, I always do this whenever Nicki Minaj and Kanye West are acting a fool and going on right-wing nonsense, you wouldn't know it if you check the Shade Room. So I think
that's why they were calling it the Paid Room.
And so I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like I don't think her career doesn't live or die by Twitter, but Instagram, it matters a lot more for her and the base that she serves, which is why she deactivated that.
Which was actually the Shade Room's a good example. It was so interesting to see like how these digital media outlets covered that are these like celebrity driven digital medias, because you can tell like what allegiances they have and don't have. Some of them are so sort of intertwined with like the talent agency world. Like they don't want to piss off that UTA guy, you know, that ultimately is on the board of that or whatever. So they're like not publishing it, or as you said, they're not covering it, or they're covering it a certain way. And like there is just a lot more of that backroom dealings. And I think that's how power really operates online and influence operates. It's not just like, oh, we bought 20,000 bots and now she got more retweets on this.
Yeah, exactly. You know what it is? Like to what you were speaking of, it's the creation of hypervisibility, which is something I like how it functions in general, like in not even just like when there's a specific propaganda campaign, but just like a design to make certain people seem more relevant, seem more important, seem more hot. It's just about putting them on the timeline more. That's what it's about. It's like hypervisibility. It's like you will suddenly not be thinking about a celebrity or a creator or whatever have you, and then they'll start appearing more on your timeline. Now you're seeing them and you're talking about them and you perceive them as being hotter than they've ever been, whether or not it's true or not. It's just about visibility and what's in your face. So yeah, it's not about like the appearance of affirmation and support on this occasional post here and there that has more likes. It's about how much I'm putting you in the face of people who may like you and perceive you as being everywhere. So yeah.
And this is kind of the best publicity that Nicki's gotten in years. I hate it, but like she is like, we're talking about her. So it's like, oh.
But I'll never listen to another motherfucking song. Spotify do not recommend me nothing from this gal. Nothing.
Yeah, she's going to be performing at like, I don't know, some like Star Spangled Banner at like the America's anniversary or something like that.
Going to a Nicki Minaj concert after, like from this, like for going forward, like you got to be ashamed of yourself.
Olay, thank you so much for joining me to discuss all of this today.
Thank you for having me, sis. It was fun.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of Power User. If you like the show, please support me on Patreon via the link below, or buy a paid subscription to my Substack newsletter at usermag.co. That's usermag.co. On my Substack, I do a bi-weekly roundup of everything that I'm reading and following online. You can also get my newsletter on Patreon, where I do bonus content and a monthly Q&A live stream. I have no long-term advertisers or sponsors for this podcast, so seriously, every single dollar of your support makes such a meaningful difference. I'll be back next Wednesday with a brand new episode of Power User. See you then.